On This Week in Enterprise Tech, it's our famous enterprise prediction episode with an all-star cast, including Brian, Curtis, and Heather. Is this the year your organization should adopt ML? Well, is self-driving trucks changing the universe? Well, come and see how good our crystal ball is for 2019. TWiET on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiET.
This is TWiET, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 323, recorded January 4th, 2019. TWiET's 2019 predictions. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by SOPHOS Cybersecurity. In an age of evolving cyber threats, you need evolved cybersecurity. Powered by artificial intelligence, SOPHOS can detect threats before they strike, killing ransomware, viruses, and cyber threats dead in their tracks. Get a free security scan and or free trial today at sophos.com. And by Thinks Canary. Detect attackers on your network with honeypots that can be deployed in minutes. For 10% off and a 60-day money-back guarantee, go to canary.tools/twit and enter the code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box. And by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Wasabi's disruptive cloud storage technology is helping enterprises solve one of their fastest growing issues, data storage. See for yourself with free, unlimited storage for a month. Go to wasabi.com, click free trial, and use offer code Enterprise. Welcome to TWiET, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that's dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world is connected. I'm your host, Lou MARESCA, your guide through this large world of the enterprise, but I definitely can't guide you by myself. I'm joined by an all-star co-host cast this week. We're going to start off the new year just right with our predictions podcast episode of 2019, and we'll get started with the all-star group. And one person who definitely knows what they're talking about this year, because our predictions are going to be all right, and we're going to get them right on, is Heather Williams, Senior Product Solutions Architect at Ruckus Network. Mo, Happy New Year. Welcome back.
Happy New Year to you, too. Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. Now, did you do any traveling during the holiday?
No, I actually managed to be more of a viral spreader. So I camped out on the sofa for a large part of the holidays. So that was the excitement around here.
Fantastic. Well, I had a staycation as well. It was relaxing, and I didn't have to travel around the world, and it was just really nice. So I definitely understand that. Well, another person I envy who knows exactly what they're talking about, Mr. Curtis Franklin, Senior Editor at Dark Reading. Curtis, Happy New Year, my friend. Great to see you again.
Well, the happiest of New Years to you, Lou. It's good to see you. Good to be here on TWiET to get the new year off to the right kind of start.
Absolutely. Well, we can't enter the new year without our geek in paradise, Mr. Gadget Man himself, Mr. Brian Chee, Director, Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu. Cheebert, you have another toy there over the holidays.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just arrived yesterday. This is called the Kiwi. It's a smart lock. I bought a set for my doors and also for Curt's doors. And by the way, this is the RFID band. So if someone decides to go out jogging, they can not have keys jabbing them in their pockets. And oh, by the way, I hope our friend Brian McHenry feels better. Supposedly, he almost has a voice back. So if all goes well, we're going to see him next week when we start talking to Bitnami.
Fantastic. Hopefully we'll get some predictions from him as well. But folks, we have a pretty jam-packed show because this is our chance to predict what the enterprise world will look at in 2019 and what it has in store for us. Are you guys ready with your crystal balls?
Yeah.
Everyone ready? All right. Well, before we get into all that crystal balling, let's go ahead and jump into this week's blips. Now, my wife just the other day, she asked me about why the iPhone thought that our faces were more secure than, say, a 12-digit alphanumeric password. Well, she had a reason for suspicion. A new study done by multiple organizations and reported by the not-for-profit Dutch Consumer Union concluded that the face unlock feature out of 110 different smartphones, 42 of them can be circumvented by using high-quality portrait photos of the owners. Now, that's 38% of tested phones allow for malicious attackers to easily unlock your phone to gain access to all of your data. Now, fortunately for Apple, they were not on that list. But Samsung Galaxy A7, A8 were on there, as well as Huawei's P20 phones, almost all of the Sony Xperia phones. Now, a bit of release and comfort comes from this report as Samsung's Galaxy S9, S9 Plus, and Note 9, Huawei's Mate 20 series, as well as Apple's iPhones, all of their series there, are some of the phones that did not fall for the photo unlocking trick, which seems to indicate that the latest and greatest generation of the smartphones fare a lot better than older models. Now, for all of you, you might want to think for 2019 and stop using facial recognition and go back to those password and pins.
Well, to begin this new year, hackers took aim at a major newspaper chain, and they scored a bullseye. Several major U.S. newspapers kicked off 2019 responding to a cyber attack that caused print and delivery problems for publications owned by the Tribune Publishing. Those papers include the Chicago Tribune, Baltimore Sun, and the Los Angeles Times. Now, few details have been released about the attack, which hit printing plants in Los Angeles and various Tribune publishing papers across the country. The incident caused delays for some publications, while others were forced to cut certain portions of content. It's important to note that the attack went old school and only affected printed papers. The websites and mobile applications for the targeted publications were not hit by the attack. According to the Los Angeles Times report, several people with knowledge of the attack said that the software used appears to be Ryuk ransomware. An individual from the company who did not have permission to comment publicly said corrupted files had the .ryk extension. Now, this is important because Ryuk is exclusively used for tailored attacks. Its encryption scheme is intentionally built for small-scale operations, such as making sure that only crucial assets and resources are infected in each targeted network, with the infection and distribution carried out manually by the attackers. We still don't know who those attackers are, although the fact that they seem to have come from outside the U.S. is giving many observers pause as we head into 2019, week 2.
To Facebook or not to Facebook is seemingly an irrelevant question. A report by Privacy International tested 34 apps that have between 10 and 500 million users each and found that 23 of them, that's 68%, sent data to Facebook, including information about the device, language, and time zone settings, and whether a user had opened or closed the specific app. The app also sent along tracking information like the user's Google advertising ID. This may sound more annoying than alarming, but considering that the Kayak travel booking app passed data to Facebook that included search parameters like the time of the search, departure and arrival city, airport and date, and the number and class of tickets, and that this behavior happened regardless of whether the user was logged in or even had a Facebook account. Facebook does have a clear history feature that was announced more than 7 months ago, but has not yet been implemented. And it's unclear how this would benefit those whose data is being shared with Facebook who do not have an account. All of this makes me think that the rest of the world may like to learn how to spell GDPR this year.
Hey, folks, you remember how I keep saying, speak up or forever hold your peace? Well, you really need to speak up and file any of your FCC complaints. Quote, if your complaint is about a telecom billing or service issue, we will serve your complaint on your provider. Your provider has 30 days to send your response to your complaint. We encourage you to contact your provider to resolve your issue prior to filing a complaint. So if you're, quote, like my buddy in Texas, where his AT&T bill got jacked up by another $110 per month, even though you're supposed to be locked into his rate, it's in your best interest to log your complaint with the FCC. When you have issues concerning a provider or policy, quote, let us know about it. This is directly off the FCC site. By submitting your story, you are not filing a consumer complaint. Your story won't be forwarded to your provider, and you will not hear back from your provider or FCC. Now, this is for the Tell Us Your Story link on the FCC page. So if you want something anonymous, on the same page, towards the right side, there is a Tell Us Your Story. So if you have some horror story or kudos or whatever about your experience with a provider, log it on the FCC page, and hopefully those comments will be used by the policymakers.
Now, as if Marriott didn't have enough problems with their data leak from last year, they're now rolling out more information about what was actually leaked. Now, according to Marriott this past week, Starwood Hotels did not encrypt password numbers for 5.25 million of their guests. Now, when the attack was first revealed by Marriott at the end of November, it said that the information leaked was upward of about 500 million of their guests, all from reservation database of Starwood. Now, that's basically a new hotel chain bought by Marriott. Now, in this recent release, they're narrowing it down to the upper limit to be actually affecting guests of the upwards of 383 million. Although a little better, the revised figure is still the largest loss in history, greater than the attack of Equifax, the Consumer Credit Report Agency, which lost driver's license and social security numbers of roughly 145.5 million Americans in 2017. Now, they still have no idea who actually carried out the attack, but we have talked about it before, and it looks to be state actors from China. Now, it was an attempt by China's Ministry of Security or State Security to compile a huge database of Americans and others with sensitive government or industry positions, including where they worked, the names of their colleagues, foreign contacts and friends, and where they travel. Now, although unrelated, it seems like it has relevance that a top official of Chinese Ministry of State Security was arrested in Belgium late last year and extradited to the United States on charges of playing a central role in hacking of American defense-related firms. Now, why are password numbers such a big deal here? Well, if it will allow for intelligence services around the world and other governments to actually track people who cross borders. Now, the State Department issued a statement last month telling passport holders not to panic because the number alone would not enable someone to create a fake passport. Now, if nothing else, this has revealed another vulnerability in the hotel chain's data storage of passport data. That 5 million numbers were not encrypted, but 20.3 million were actually encrypted. So they need to find out why those two things weren't and justify that and fix that. Now, I guess there is an upside. They learned a little bit by their mistakes. Maybe.
Speaking of mistakes, remember shadow brokers? Well, it looks like one of them was a contractor for the NSA. A new court opinion shows that Harold Martin, a former NSA contractor whom some have previously speculated was the individual behind the leaks of some highly classified NSA hacking tools in 2016, was indeed a prime suspect in the case. Martin was arrested in August 2016 after law enforcement agents raided his home near Baltimore, Maryland, and discovered nearly 50 terabytes of government data, including documents marked secret and top secret in his possession. A federal grand jury last February indicted Martin on 20 counts of willfully retaining national defense information. His trial is scheduled to start in June of this year. The latest court document doesn't shed much new light on his involvement in the shadow brokers leak, but it does make clear that the raid on his house and the subsequent arrest happened because law enforcement at least suspected his involvement in the matter. Martin's illegal activities are believed to have begun in 1996 and continued through to his arrest in 2016. Over that period, he misappropriated literally millions of pages of government data and stored them at home in various formats. It's important to note, though, that up until now, the government has not said if the documents in Martin's possession at the time of his arrest included the NSA hacking tools. Neither has law enforcement explicitly identified Martin as being involved in the shadow brokers leak.
Supply chains may no longer be the weakest link. According to a survey done by Forbes Insights, SAS, Intel, and Accenture, 64% of companies are adding or planning to add AI capabilities to their logistics and supply chain operations. Supply chain complications caused headaches for companies in a lot of markets last year, from shortages to security breaches. The complexity of supply chains and all their constantly moving parts lead to a lack of real-time visibility across the supply chain operations. With companies needing to tighten up their processes so that they can quickly, visibly, and painlessly move products from factories to warehouses to distributors, AI is seen as a reliable replacement to the guesswork that is still being used all too often. AI can automatically generate a supply chain map showing everything about an order, including the allocated quantity and the expected delivery date. It delivers highly accurate recommendations and predictions based on machine learning and data science, not simple rules-based calculations. And all I want to know is if this means that my Amazon Prime deliveries will actually make it out to the little log cabin by the lake.
So there's a new cool Amazon Echo feature. Anyway, if you're like me and you want your home to look lived in while you're on a trip, and I, for one, would like to have a secondary level of intrusion detection for my home, To this end, Amazon will soon be rolling out its new guard option that will listen for glass breaking, smoke or burglar alarm sounds, and optionally will turn on your smart lights to help make the home look occupied. So the gist is you won't have to depend on something like IFTTT to turn lights on at dusk and turn them off after a certain amount of time. And since the Echo is constantly listening anyway, she might as well also listen for signs of a break-in. Interestingly enough, the system seems to have API hooks into Ring and ADT alarm system, but at this moment, the extent is unknown.
Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, it brings us one step closer to our exciting predictions. But before we talk about that, we actually have to thank a great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's SOPHOS. Now, if you and I know organizations worldwide are worried about cybersecurity threats, breaches, data leaks, privacy, and more, and it's become a real big global concern. Now, we all heard about the increased numbers of data breaches over the past years. Now, what can one do about it? Well, SOPHOS Cybersecurity has evolved the approach to cybersecurity by using advanced artificial intelligence to detect threats before they strike. Now imagine killing ransomware, viruses, and other cyber threats dead in their tracks. SOPHOS uses deep learning to interpret data and respond to threats with very little latency. Now there are a ton of vectors of attacks out there, and they are on the increase in sophistication on those attacks. As you know, well, this is where SOPHOS gets to work and make sure that you're covered. Now, if you have any doubt, there was a recent independent security test done by SE Labs that ranked SOPHOS #1 with the best protection ratings across the board for both large enterprises and small businesses. Now, SOPHOS has provided advanced technology for millions of businesses worldwide with their premium capabilities brought to both Mac and PC users alike. And there is also SOPHOS Home as well. And this brings real-time protection for ransomware attacks, malicious software, hacking attempts, and more. Now, you might think, well, if it does all those things, it might be tough to get installed and deployed. That's where SOPHOS prevails. The interface is super simple. Management is done online, allowing you to secure your own laptop or managing the security of multiple devices in your own home and around the world. Now, you can sign up for a single account and protect all the Macs and PCs in your home with one single console. Now, because it's cloud-based, you can use it and keep your relatives secure even if they're thousands of miles away. You can even remotely manage their security, clean up threats, and keep their systems safe. Now, I can remember those calls I get from my relatives asking if I can help them with virus protection and threat protection. This is definitely a great solution for them. Now, as you know, SOPHOS tagline is security made simple. So the whole thing is incredibly easy to use. Just log into your browser and start securing your systems today. Now, whether you're a home user or a large enterprise, SOPHOS has you covered. In fact, some of the largest businesses in the world use SOPHOS to stay protected from ransomware attacks that devastate businesses all over. Now, third-party reviewers consistently rank SOPHOS among the best cybersecurity provider out there. With the synchronized security, you can manage all of your SOPHOS products from one single cloud-based console. Get a free trial today and/or a free security scan at sophos.com. That's Sophos, SOPHOS.com. And we thank SOPHOS for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's time for our predictions, and Cheeber's going to take the reins here.
So, hello, TWiET. Right. We're going to try doing our predictions just a little differently this year. Instead of doing the bit, where we have how we did in 2018, we've actually been interspersing those in the episodes and saying, yeah, okay, so that came true and so forth. That's what I'm going to do in 2019. I'm actually going to keep a cheat sheet of all the predictions from the hosts. And as they pop up during the year, we're going to actually bring them back to the surface. So what's going to happen is each of us are going to do predictions. We're going to do the first half of 2019 as our short term, and then after the ad, we're going to do the second half of 2019. And let's see how well we do. So why don't we kick this off with Lou doing his first half predictions for 2019.
Ooh, exciting. So, DevOps is one of those things. It means different things to different organizations, and they start by getting just the idea is just to get the start of that mindset and that culture in the organization that DevOps kind of bring along with it. Now, as the year unfolds, the first half will include, I think, an aggressive adoption of DevOps, either in an evergreen way or by using a service that actually does it for you. Now, that's DevOps is one of those kind of, I'd say, buzzword or buzz terms that a lot of people say. And we've seen actually a pretty big change Like, for instance, what has DevOps taught us here? Now, organizations, in order to keep like their customers and investors engaged, they have had continuous improvement over the year. And in order to do that, DevOps made it really simple. They made it for frequent, rapid, automatic deployment cycles, easy to use containers and microservices or microkernels. Operations and data teams are also figuring out that it's really easy to get data about customers in order to have a constant communication pipeline between their teams and their customers alike. Now, I kind of think that there's a ton of services out there that are offering some things to make it easier for organizations. And even though we've seen 50% of businesses actually adopt DevOps, we're going to see a larger increase, I think, this year. One of the big services, I think, is continuous security. Now, we had a ton of guests on this year that talked about emerging products that analyze traffic and services and applied auto policies and used machine learning to alert and take action. Now, this year, organizations will start splurging for those types of services. There were a number of gates and data leaks last year, over $12.5 billion in losses in 2018 from them, which increased 46% in Q1 to Q3 from 2017. Now, if a business were to say that they had 46% increase in revenue, you would fall off your seat because you thought, oh, I got to go invest that in that right away. Well, this report says that ransomware is on the rise, and that whole assume breach mindset will help with this, and so it'll help actually automate systems as well, and that's why people will invest in DevOps and in security this year. So I think it's definitely going to be a huge increase this year, and we're going to see services kind of coming out of the woodwork for sure. What do you guys think?
I'm going to be firmly in agreement. I'm actually going to say about time. There's been a lot of holes that the enterprise has been trying to fill, and personally, I think DevOps is the nice little spackle we can use to clean up some of these holes and how things just kind of drop through the cracks. And I kind of wish we had Brian McHenry. He's actually made some comments about DevOps in his world, but Curt's got a pretty good finger on the pulse. So what do you think, guys? Jump in.
Well, I will go ahead and jump in here because I'm going to be in violent agreement with you and with Lou. I think that people are beginning to use DevOps much more. And I think the reason is pretty simple. The pace of change is pretty much demanding it. The idea that the development team and the operations team can live on two separate ice flows and just sort of throw penguins across at one another isn't able to keep the enterprise moving anymore. You've got to be able to have the two integrated. And the way doing that makes sense is to treat everything as software. Now, the big impediments here, the big roadblocks, I think, are much more cultural than they are technological. There are some great DevOps tools out there. If you're a smaller organization or want to try something, there are even some pretty good open source DevOps tools out there. But when you start getting into the solid orchestration of something like a Puppet, when you start getting into the quick iteration, I think companies are seeing what is possible. They're seeing, as Lou said, that you can build security into the process, and the advantages are just so far out ahead of the costs and the downside that I think we are getting ready to be part of the DevOps world.
And that's a hat trick. I was looking at the chat room. I think that all three of us are in complete agreement today with Lou. I wholeheartedly agree. And that RJP nailed it. I made a reference to DevSecOps, and that was going to be the only addition I was going to make. I had a little bit of a brain cramp, so I missed what we were doing with penguins. And is there an SPCA ruling on that? Because it sounded like there was some penguin abuse going on. But other than that, I'd say that we're 1 for 1 on this one so far.
I think as long as you treat the penguins as software, you're in good shape.
Okay.
Okay, so Lou, what's next?
So I think we have Curt jumping in next, right? Or do you want me to do more of my predictions?
Why don't we do Curt? We'll just keep going for the first half, and then we'll jump in.
Because he has a good one here. So,
all right. Well, mine is that I think this is going to be the year, even in the first half of the year, when augmented reality really comes into the enterprise in a big way. And this is a very safe prediction on my part, because depending on exactly how you look at it, augmented reality is already in the enterprise. It's there in all kinds of technical fields for things like maintenance, for repair, for field service. And what I think we're going to start seeing is this being integrated into many more blue-collar technical positions. And I think it's going to start entering the executive level white-collar jobs in a much more significant way. Now, there are some very good reasons for this. Almost all of them have to do with complexity, especially among data scientists and the financial sector quants and those who deal with complex data. They really need ways to visualize and manipulate that data that go beyond what's possible in a standard two-dimensional spreadsheet. The best way to get into that is augmented reality. And I can say that because the very first time I had a chance to put on an Oculus Rift headset was at an SAP Sapphire conference, showing off what they could do with data. Now, we're going to see both virtual reality and augmented reality, or as Microsoft phrases it, mixed reality. I think that the augmented reality and mixed reality will move faster, but I think the virtual reality is going to be there. And this is a case where we had the augmented reality and virtual reality devices that were first tried with the consumer level. And let's face it, generally they bombed. They were too expensive, too jerky, too many problems. The enterprise applications allowed the finances for the vendors to get the technology right. And the increase in both bandwidth and CPU speed have given us the raw horsepower to make the experience smooth and somewhat less nausea-inducing. Now it's going to be going back to consumers, so it's a nice feedback loop. This cycle where it's feeding one on its other is there, and I think that we're at the point, that wonderful inflection point, where we get to see the beginning of that glorious hockey stick curve. So that's my thing. Reality takes on more forms in the first half of 2019.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, because I've seen there was a big kick in 2018 around AR shopping. We saw Target, Costco, I think Amazon got in there, Home Depot, where they offered the shopping experiences for consumers to kind of go in there and envision whether it's home goods or other devices in their particular environment and be able to shop that way. This way you don't have to go to the stores. Their online systems became a lot better because of that. They knew that more people were going to be buying online. So I think that this is definitely going to roll over to businesses as well. We're starting to see some of this in supply chain management, asset management, warehouse management, where people will be using AR to manage, hey, well, how do we stack these things? Where do we put these things? Where should they be? What location in the warehouse? That kind of thing, all done by using AR. So I definitely think that there's additional complexity and capabilities here that can be added. And I do see that there's going to be some organizations doing that. Now, the question is, what devices will they be using to do that? Because some of these devices that are out there today are not inexpensive enough to be giving to some of the blue collar jobs, since there's so many of them out there. To be able to supply the devices to all those different organizations and different areas might be tough for organizations. So hopefully we'll see at CES this year some more devices coming out that will actually make this easier for organizations to purchase them and make it available to all parts of their organization. But we'll have to see.
I'm also in agreement. My prediction, when I was talking about AR over the years, is I've been wanting to use it for field ecology and a lot of things, but it's already been used in specialized verticals, like Boeing and a lot of the big automakers are using AR for assembly line work. So it's already in verticals, but that's when you can justify the huge cost. I think cost is going to be a big deal, but I think realistically, the biggest impediment to AR has been toolkits. And we've already covered a few vendors during the year where we actually talked about simplifying the AR workflow. So I think as the toolkits come online and people start realizing how well this can help their sales, their engineering, and a lot of other things, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more. And considering the amount of horsepower in a lot of these mobile devices, I think we're going to start seeing this year a lot of handheld based AR. So I'm totally in agreement with Curt. So this ought to be interesting. Hey, Mo, you're in the field a lot. What do you think?
I actually do have an opinion on this. I think this is the year that we're going to start seeing dividends paid back on some of the investment that we've been paying. AR and AI being two big ones, where I think 2019 is their year to shine. I have some other technologies that I think we're finally going to see some payback on, especially on the Wi-Fi side. But I think AR and AI. We may finally have hit that turning point where we actually have some practical and profitable applications for it.
Fantastic. So I think we're going to actually, before we actually have to do a break real quick, but when we come back, we'll jump into Mo's predictions and we'll get into what she thinks will come into 2019 as well. But before we do, we have to thank a great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is Canary. Now, we all know that hackers take the path of least resistance. I always say your organization is only as secure as your weakest link. And what is your weakest link? Well, your users, of course. Well, in fact, being in the assume breach mindset, your organization will be better off because it takes an average of 191 days for an organization or company to realize there has been a data breach. Now, there is an increasing number of data breaches each year, and it's time to go on the defense. That's where Thanks Canary steps in. These honeypot appliances are super cool. You spread out a couple of these devices on your network, and when there's a breach, you are alerted immediately. Back in the early 2000s, people talked about using honeypots all the time. But they weren't so easy to deploy and use. Now, Canary actually made it super simple with zero administration and managing overhead. Canaries actually can be set up in under 4 minutes. Within minutes of configuration, a Canary will look for identical routers in the system, a switch, a NAS server, a Linux box, or Windows server. Attackers can't even tell the difference. They look identical to these things. Now, Lynx, the company behind Canary, has been fighting back in security game for over 2 decades. They train companies, militaries, governments on how to break into networks. They've been used and experienced to actually build Canary. They use that major experience to build Canary. And you might think, well, hackers are going to know these things are honeypots. They're going to stay away from them. Not at all. Thanks Canaries don't look vulnerable on your network at all. They look valuable. They actually put fake. You can actually put fake files on them, or even enroll them in Active Directory to make look like they're real machines and real devices. Now, these devices add extreme value to fight against security breaches. Not only are they a great value, they are licensed annually, and if you actually break the machine, or if the device breaks during that, things will actually replace them. Now, since they are priced well, you can start with a few and scale up over time. Some organizations in the world use Canaries up in their networks right now. There's some big ones out there using it right now. And I think it's time for you to get that value as well. Don't end on this year's list of top 10 data breaches. Visit canary.tools/TWiET, and for just $7,500 per year, you get 5 Canaries, your own hosted console, upgrades, support, and maintenance for a full year. And we have a special offer for our audience. Use code TWiET in the How Did You Hear About Us box to get 10% off the price for life. Now, we're sure you'll love the Thanks Canary, but if you're not happy, you can always return your Canaries with their 2-month money-back guarantee for a full refund. That's canary.tools/TWiET and enter the code TWiET in the How Did You Hear About Us box. And we thank Thanks Canary for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, on to the predictions of the first half of 2019. Mo, what do you think?
Well, I have to tell you that this is the show out of the whole year that makes me the most nervous, because as we've learned from H.G. Wells and on up through the years, it's not all that difficult to predict new technologies, but predicting with any accuracy how it's going to impact us in our day-to-day life, I think, is more of a crapshoot. But here it is. So I don't know how many of you guys are as sick as I am of hearing the term IoT, but mobile devices and accessories, they're going to continue to grab all the headlines and a lot of our money. But aside from TVs and all of the new components that go with the so-called smart homes, Cheebert's new lock not counted there. I think that the most positive advancement in this field is going to be more in the area of healthcare, and especially digital healthcare, because we need to be addressing. We have a need for affordable services. We also need to be able to address the needs in a lot of the underserved areas like rural America. So I think marketplace pressures, as well as the continued trend of specialization towards specialization and away from general practitioners, is going to just increase that need. And this, as a segue, might also be the year that we get to admit that we don't need all those personal devices, not counting the IoT. And I know people personally who have hundreds of devices in their house alone. But I think that most of us will not need, or will no longer need, more than one smartphone, one tablet, one computer. It used to be that the analysts every year were predicting a new explosion of devices. But I think outside of IoT, we're done with that. What do you guys think?
Well, since I seem to be the one chosen to respond first, I'm going to say that I think that you are optimistic about the number of devices. And you show that you probably have not had an adolescent in the house in the last year or two, because most of the people
them all out.
Most of the people that I talk to say that in the enterprise, they think that the average employee now represents about 5 IP addresses. When I talk to people at universities, it tends to be towards 7, because students carry with them things like the Switch game, mobile game console, and things like that. And it really is astounding when you look at people, just how many devices are in their little personal ecosystem. I know many people who carry not only their laptop, but a tablet, 2 phones, more than one smartwatch. Even professionals, young professionals, may well have that that gaming console. And then there are things like the various health and wellness IoT devices. So I think the number of addresses on the network will continue to go up. Now, the thing about smart home is, I think this one is, here's what I think about that. We're going to see more devices in the home. We're starting to see people caution consumers about the devices that they bring into their home in the form of light bulbs and thermostats and things like that. Because let's face it, almost all of those that do have some intelligence in them are calling out to a server farm somewhere. And the odds are pretty good that if you buy an inexpensive one off of Amazon or eBay or someplace like that, the server farm it's calling out to has a physical address in the People's Republic of China. That may or may not make you uncomfortable. We're going to see, I think, someone this year come up with a home-based firewall or UTM box that lets people start to control their IoT devices a little bit better. California is leading the way in saying that you have to have at least minimal configuration for security available on new IoT devices. With any luck at all, that's going to continue. And the reason the enterprise cares is that all of these devices become part of the corporate infrastructure as soon as the employee logs on to the same Wi-Fi network as all of these devices and uses a VPN to tunnel straight in to the enterprise network.
Well, Curt, I think you're absolutely right about that. Sorry, Lou, to cut you off. I think that you're being a little optimistic about how seriously they're going to take the security risks of IoT. I think that it's going to take us getting bit in the butt before, and maybe even a little past that, before it gets properly addressed.
Yeah, I agree. I think the interesting thing here is, just in my house alone, I'd say 4 out of the 4 kids' devices that were given for Christmas, like I have a little Vector robot that was given. They're all IoT devices. They're all hooked up to the internet. They all collect data. This one even does Amazon keywords and Alexa stuff. I think that these types of things are going to continue. Those are going to increase over and over. I'm just looking at my Eero right now, who actually is a sponsor of this of TWiET and TWiET. But I'm using them at home here, and I'm noticing I have 75 devices connected to my Wi-Fi right now. I only have 1 iPad, so I think that and a laptop. So I think that that's definitely showing you the increase. Now, security-wise, I definitely think it's going to be a big problem. I'm going to say this year I agree that we're going to see maybe some security appliances or devices or tools or software that's going to come out there to say, hey, we know you have a bunch of IoT devices on your network. We know that they could be insecure, and so we're going to provide better ways to secure these things for you. Because the edge devices, these devices that are sitting out there, are not going to do them from the manufacturers themselves. So we're going to help you there as well. So I think that that's definitely a place where these hardware vendors, these router vendors, these firewall vendors will definitely need to help more in that aspect. But I definitely agree that there's going to be more devices are going to come in. It's just going to be a flood, and there's going to be having some services to support it. What do you think, Jubert?
Well, I'm in agreement with everybody. I think Mo's prediction is going to start in the first half, and then especially in the healthcare world, I think it's going to stall. There's been a lot of people talking about the lack of security for home routers and so forth. Dan Geer's keynote really went in and saying the real edge of the network is at the home. I'm actually working on a proposal for cybersecurity on trying to create some standards, or at least some best practices for power vendors, photovoltaic, wind, and so forth, people that hook up at the residential level to generate electricity. The problem is the national providers, the big guys, have standards, and they're being worked with NIST and Department of Energy, but the small guys aren't. And I think that more than anything else, as people want their systems to be able to participate, they want to be able to sell power back to the power companies. And I think the power companies are going to be pushing back and saying, hey, we're not going to let you talk to us unless you have a reasonably secured network. And right now, there are no standards. There aren't even best practices yet. So I think the wave's going to start, and then it's going to collapse as people like healthcare and power and so forth say, enough is enough. IoT is way too insecure. We need some standards, if not at the national level. I think we're going to see it at the state levels. Obviously, we're starting to see it in California. I think we're going to start seeing in more and more states as especially the power people and the healthcare people realize IoT is a big risk, and there's too many fly-by-nights using really, really old versions of Linux kernels and things like that, and not doing a proper job of even testing their devices. We actually had home security systems with hard-coded passwords, for God's sakes. So I think it's going to start, but I think it's going to collapse and stall once regulators start saying, whoa, we need to do something better, and we don't want to leave ourselves open. And, we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to roll into my prediction for the first half. And we had a whole bunch of people in Hawaii being really, really ticked off about how freaked out their pets were, because even though it wasn't New Year's Eve, and even though aerial fireworks, commercial grade aerial fireworks, are illegal in the state of Hawaii, it looked like a war zone in my neighborhood on New Year's Eve and in the evenings leading up to New Year's Eve. Well, one of the things came up. I'm going to read some of this from Wikipedia. Determination of the origin of gunfire by sound was conceived before World War I, where it was first used operationally for artillery ranging. In the early 1990s, the areas of East Palo Alto and eastern Menlo Park, California, were besieged with crime. During 1992, there were 42 homicides in East Palo Alto, making it the per capita murder capital of the United States. The Menlo Park Police Department was often called upon to investigate when residents reported gunshots. Anyway, I'm going to keep going. The bottom line is a seismologist solved it, and they used that to go and determine where gunshots were coming from in that area. Now, one of the things that I read was that now some of these gunshot locator software are being used also to find illegal fireworks. I'm predicting we're going to see at least one or two fairly major articles from fairly large cities saying enough is enough. These aerial fireworks, improperly used or improperly stored, don't always reach their target altitude and cause a nightmare for fire services all over America. So I think we're going to start seeing some of the police departments or fire departments or both around the country make the headlines of using shot detectors, not only to find an active shooter situation, but also to go find illegal fireworks. So, Lou, why don't you dive in on this one? What do you think?
So I would say that you're saying this is the first half. I'm going to actually disagree on this one. I'm sorry, Chee. I think I've noticed that I saw some news headlines in the past year. I think it was San Antonio that opted out of buying this system because of the cost. Now, not necessarily the value of it. Obviously, the return on investment, I think, would definitely be a great value. But these things cost in the upwards of $550,000, $600,000 for just one. And sometimes you need more than one in areas to be able to pinpoint that vector. And I think that this is going to be a really hard sell for local governments, maybe for areas that have had shooters in the past. But I'd say that cities and local governments that haven't had them, they're going to very rarely want to invest in something that they might not be able. It's kind of like investing in more insurance for something like gap insurance or something. They tend to, consumers and as well as governments tend to look beyond those types of things because they don't necessarily know if there's going to be any return on investment in it. And even though they're super valuable, and I think that they would definitely work, I don't think that there's going to be an immediate investment in them right away, unfortunately. But again, like I said, I could be wrong, but I think that that's something that we'll see in the future, definitely later on. What do you guys think?
I think that there could be an uptick in it once there's been some kind of proven results. I think that municipalities tend to be leery about being early adopters, and so and the sticker shock might be a preventative against that. I can't get past the image in my mind though of my local area adopting this, because as you guys know, I live on a lake in East Texas, and I'm pretty sure that system would be lit up pretty much 24/7 with the kind of activity that we have around here, between hunters and fireworks year round being a problem. I sort of would like to see what happened if they did try to implement that system.
Well, here's my prediction on this. And first of all, Brian, I think that the prediction is correct. I have some questions about the timeline. And here's why I have the question, because I think that what we may well see is a system from a company like Ring. This is a company that already has both cameras and microphones that are being deployed at no cost to municipalities all over cities and towns. It's already collecting the information because they have the cloud backup of the video that comes from these and the audio as well. it is a relatively short programmatic step to have something like gunfire or fireworks detection. And with the number of sensors they have out there, the accuracy could be pretty good. Furthermore, they can have a sensor-dense network at a price point that no civil authority-oriented system can hope to match. So I think it's coming, but I think it's going to take someone like a Ring or one of their competitors going, hey, we've got some data that we could sell to municipalities and package it as a public service. Face it, it wouldn't take much to convince the average Ring customer that if the police knew that there was gunfire near them and could respond, it would make them safer. So that's the way I see it coming, and I just think it's going to take a little longer than 6 months to get rolling.
Well, this has been a great discussion. We definitely have more predictions coming up, especially the latter half of 2019. But before we do, we have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Now, I've used Wasabi Cloud Storage before, and it's super awesome. You might say that cloud storage is expensive the more you store in it and the more times you actually perform operations on it. But in this day and age, the truth is most companies are trying to make it cheaper to store for storage fees, but they're not handling the ingress and egress fees. Now, this is where the experience gets great. Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage doesn't charge you for ingress and egress fees. That's where it really kind of makes game changer for them. Now, you might say, hey, I can tell you that the more cheaper you go on a cloud storage, sometimes you give up on performance and reliability. Well, Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage has a way to blow your mind here. If you're doing personal projects all the way up to enterprise projects, Wasabi seems to figure it all out. Now, listen to this cost, $4.99 per terabyte per month. Plus, the game changer is that you get free unlimited egress for your data and no charge for API calls. So you don't have to pay for that actual access your data like a lot of the other services out there. Now, go check out there right now where you're already paying for cloud storage, because I can tell you not having to include those egress fees and API calls and those CRUD operations will substantially save you money over time. Now, you're probably thinking, well, if they're cheaper, they might be slower. Well, Wasabi has developed a disruptive technology. They found ways to actually pull raw performance out of the storage devices without compromising on performance. And they actually have a revolutionary process that lays data down on disks sequentially as opposed blocks. And what happens is that makes Wasabi's storage 80% cheaper and 6 times faster than some of the leading industries leaders out there now today. Now, if you're worried about compliance for your organization, Wasabi has it covered with HIPAA, FINRA, and CJS compliance as well. Now, fast, cheap storage isn't worth much if your data isn't secure. Wasabi has an answer. Wasabi offers a unique feature of immutable buckets that cannot be deleted or altered, protecting your invaluable data from accidental malicious destruction. Now, see if you can find another service that's actually doing that today. Now, plus, they also have a 90-day rotating integrity check that they do, and 11 nines of durability. That's crazy for a cloud service out there. Now, if you're worried about data migration to the cloud, that's easy. Wasabi has the answer. They have their ball transfer appliance. This thing is powered by Netgear, and it's designed to transfer large data sets while dramatically reducing your costs. Now, you might already have cloud storage today, or organizations trying to store data on-premise to save money or wants to move partially to the cloud. Well, with Wasabi, it will have you rethinking those approaches because they really have figured it all out. I want you to take a bet right now and try it out. Go build something fun or move some of your data right now. Experience Wasabi for yourself with free unlimited storage for a month. Go to wasabi.com, click the free trial link, and enter the code Enterprise. See how much storing in the cloud can save your business. That's wasabi.com and enter the code Enterprise. And we thank Wasabi for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Now we're jumping into the predictions for the latter half of 2019. Chee, take it away.
Okay, so actually, Lou, it's your prediction up first.
Okay.
But why don't I toss the ball back to you and introduce your prediction?
Okay, fantastic. Well, machine learning to me has been a buzzword term everyone's been talking about, but it's been hard to actually see where it's coming from. Sometimes it's hard to surface your data in your organization in order to use it. Now, organizations have spent pretty much all of 2018 trying to organize their structured and their unstructured data sources in order to make it available for actually be usable by machine learning models. Plus, training those models takes some time too. So I think they've spent a lot of time doing that. This is the year of enterprise ML transformations. We will see a new step in the maturity here, and companies will go from the proof of concept to real world business impact using ML. Now, what will actually propel this forward? I think edge IoT. I think going on Heather's predictions here, IoT will definitely help this propel forward. I think 5G will also add to it. That adds low latency, high bandwidth networks. Means more connected devices using low power, so they're there. They're always there. They're giving you data. Now, organizations will also save time and money by processing and analyzing data at the edge versus moving it back to the core and storing it and applying traditional analytics. So I think they're going to take it to the next step here. Plus, more and more cloud providers will provide easier ways to actually identify the data that you need, surface it, create the models for you, and they'll actually start getting it out there, like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and more have ways to point services at your data sources and get value out of it right away. Now, watch these services, because I think they will literally shock you with some of the stuff they're going to be coming out with this year and making it easy for you to use it. Now, I'm going to make one quick minor prediction here. I think that you're going to see slowing growth on the Hadoop side. I think that you're going to see more growth on the traditional, like SQL cloud-based SQL database or traditional databases that are in the cloud, and an increased amount of maybe microservices and Kubernetes use. But I definitely think that ML will kind of take the cake here, and they're going to start using these traditional data sources as their data source for their models. And I also think that machine learning will be integrated into more products at an even greater rate this year. So I think, even though we talked about ML in the past years, I think this is the year that people are starting to get the use cases out of it, the scenarios, what they need to do with it, how they need to get, they've organized their data, they've paid for these services, they've done it themselves. Now they're going to start using it for real. We're going to start seeing it show up everywhere. So I think this is the year for enterprise ML. Mo, what do you think?
I think that I got caught up reading about the Worcestershire sauce and the. I shouldn't be allowed to read the chat room, and I obviously have trouble multitasking. You were agreeing with me, so I don't have anything to complain about there.
Okay.
Lou, I'm going to jump in and say that I agree with you, and I feel comfortable agreeing with you because of your very careful choice of the phrase that you used, machine learning. Machine learning is much different than artificial intelligence. There are some common techniques, but they're much different things. I think machine learning is going to be important because it feeds part of the success of the DevOps. Machine learning is going to be critical for scaling orchestration and scaling automation. So I think that it's there. I think both of your predictions work into one another. And I also think we're going to see some great new experimentation going on, because things like TensorFlow are making really experimenting with machine learning possible for a lot more people. I was very impressed with what I saw in the AI Village at DEF CON. Looking forward to seeing how everybody's doing there again at this year's iteration of the con.
You know what? I'm going to also agree. Ta-da! I'm actually going to start using this to go and identify fish species coming in off our webcams on our underwater observatory. So I am a firm believer that machine learning is going to really start showing up. And with things like that Intel Neural Compute Stick, I think machine learning is going to be at the edge a lot more than we might have first thought. Will it be second half? Yeah, it's going to take me that long to get my app debugged. So, yeah, maybe. Anyway, hey, Curt, I think it's time for your next prediction.
Oh, turning back to me. Well, I appreciate that. Let me pull it up so that I don't get confused. Because what I was talking about is intelligence again, but less about the type and more about the location. I think that we're going to see much more intelligence moving to the edge as something that many people are calling fog computing gets heavier and better. You know, I've been in the industry long enough. I've seen a couple of iterations of this whole notion of the compute power moving away from the center, away from mainframes and mini computers out to personal computers, and then back to servers, then back out, then back into the cloud. We're seeing more and more intelligence start to be placed at the edge, and there are a lot of reasons for this. Some of them have to do with privacy concerns. Some of them have to do with the sheer nature of the computing that's going on. If you do some processing on the edge, then the amount of data that has to flow back and forth to cloud services is much less. So I think we're going to see the rise of the intelligent edge, and that's going to open up a lot of interesting things, including things like the voice assistants, the Amazon, the Google, the Apple, becoming more privacy aware because every word doesn't have to go back to the corporate galactic central to go through the natural language processing. There are chips from companies like Intel, from Sony, that enable that kind of natural language processing and machine intelligence out on the edge. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And it once again is going to make for some very innovative applications and a very interesting time starting later this year.
I agree here. I think I'm starting to see. I actually agree wholeheartedly on this because I'm starting to see some new devices come out. You know, not unlike the Raspberry Pis that are more powerful, that can run machine learning models right on them, do analytics right away. So they add extra. They lower the cost to actually do this work for organizations. So we'll see more adoptions of the IoT to come out because of that. And they'll put less strain on the servers. So they're just going to be providing that information back to the servers for organizations. So I completely agree with this.
You know, I agree too. And I also add the comment of about time. We've been doing this in the science world because a lot of our study areas have been very bandwidth constricted. Places like Curry Atoll, I can't afford Iridium, so I was using models. Only when a observation goes outside the model will it go and light up the most, the more expensive Iridium connectivity. So I think we're going to hopefully start seeing this more, so we will actually reduce the bandwidth loads out at the edge by pushing more of the models, because we are getting bigger, faster, cooler chips. Let's go and use that intelligence and start using some models. Mo?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm, as you probably could guess, a huge fan of taking the load off of the Wi-Fi network whenever you can. I think as processing capabilities just continue to get better, that pushing the job out to the edge is more appropriate. And yeah, so I think you guys have done a really good job. We're going to switch to me now. So I get to talk about giving a voice to the voiceless. So I think that this year Wi-Fi calling is going to finally see a really high growth as it becomes more widely adopted that by the client devices, and also this cellular coverage continuing to remain an issue. I also think that we're going to see a broader scale implementation of private LTE as enterprises realize the value of having a secure network with a semi-private RF space. And so I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I see a future episode of TWiET talking more about CBRS. From a residential perspective, I think that the wireless data usage has really increased to the level that we're starting to see consumer networks not able to keep up and provide the stability. And as you guys noted, the number of devices that you saw come into your house just over the holidays is actually putting more strain on this. I think that this is putting an increased pressure on giving a network that's going to actually provide a quality experience to the end users. And this is going to put more pressure on having qualified network and Wi-Fi engineers. And this is a network that, like my post-holiday jeans, is already a little too tight. So I'll end on a positive note and say that I think that this is the year that people finally get smart and wise up about the need for net neutrality.
So I'm gonna jump on and say I think I definitely agree that especially Wi-Fi calling is a big thing for organizations. I've seen several organizations worldwide, have visited some that have actually implemented this because one, it's clearer than normal mobile calling today. You can actually see the difference when they handshake between the two of the quality of a call that you get out of it. So when you're doing conference calls and calls around the world, it's definitely universally better. And so I've seen organizations actually start to adopt this. It's easier for them to control and audit who's calling what, when, where. And so I think that that's also something, having these private Wi-Fi networks to handle it. The other thing is I'm going to also go on the flip side. So I'm going to say partially here. With 5G coming out, we're starting to see the adoption of this on a lot of devices out there. It's going to push more devices to hopefully use 5G because, one, it does provide or require less battery consumption, and two, you have higher speeds to support more higher quality calling. So I think we might see a seesaw of this depending on how the adoption of 5G happens. What do you guys think?
Well, I think you're right, but I think that 5G is something that we're going to be talking about, and the adoption rates for 5G is something we're going to be talking about for the next 2 or 3 years. So I don't think that that's going to have an impact on anything this year. I agree with Mo about this happening. What I think the complexity comes in on is the fact that what we will end up with are devices and applications that are more and more network agnostic. The consumer just won't care and often won't know whether they're on Wi-Fi or a cell network or anything else for that matter. But in order to make that seamless, it means that all of the quality has to be good, all of the applications have to be good. It goes back to an analogy that I truly dislike, but I've got to use: the duck. Everything calm and placid on the surface, paddling like mad underneath. Fortunately, we have people with Mo's skills and talents who can help that paddling happen very effectively.
Okay, so I'm going to be the contrary opinion. I want to see this happen. I want it to succeed. But being, 2,500 miles from California, the West Coast, my Wi-Fi calling is to the point where I actually start having to turn it off on a fairly regular basis. It just does not work reliably. A lot of things, well, especially signaling, things like text messages almost never work for me on Wi-Fi. And I will admit I'm on T-Mobile, so in theory it's supposed to work. They've had a lot of experience with this. I want to see it happen. I want to see some standards. But while I want to believe, I keep seeing these, cellular carriers fighting over standards and, being all kinds of, strange things that I'm not sure this is really going to happen in 2019 because I don't think the standards committees are going to be able to come to any kind of agreement. We'll see, but, how about I say hopeful? Anyway, I'm going to pull up the tail end of this and I'm going to start talking about science fiction. In this case, autonomous freight companies are going to seek permission to hit the roads. With the skyrocketing cost of moving freight around in the world, we've already started seeing the Australian first implementation of autonomous freight trains. With America's love of interstate trucking, I'm predicting that we're going to see some of the larger freight companies seek licensing for depot-to-depot freight deliveries using autonomous trucks. Limited trials are already underway with Waymo in Atlanta, Uber in Arizona, Tesla doing testing in Sacramento, and Embark in various areas of California. However, these are all limited area tests, and my prediction is that permits will be sought and then fought over in court over testing on the interstates sometime in the third to fourth quarter of 2019. So, Lou, what do you think, man?
So I'm going to agree with you. Actually, it's funny that you did this because I'd say, I don't know if it was last year's predictions or the year before, I said that was the year of autonomous vehicles because of, I think it was was it Tesla that was coming out with their autonomous trucks and their battery-driven trucks. And I can honestly see. I think that there is definitely an end in vision for that, or for that kind of set of the industry, where they're going to start seeing this more and more, especially short-term trips, short distance trips. And so I completely agree. This is definitely going to come, whether it's the latter half or the first half of 2020. I definitely think it's coming. Curt?
And I'm going to.
Go ahead, Mo. Please take the next one.
Apologize. Apparently, I can't read today. I was so excited about being able to agree. I'm going to say that I'm cautiously optimistic about this because I've been looking forward to autonomous vehicles since the hoverboard was announced. I frankly don't like to drive, and I'd love to have a ride everywhere. I would like to add that I've been paying a lot more attention to the high-speed train that is supposedly going to be breaking ground between Houston and Dallas. And while I'm optimistic for autonomous vehicles, I have no illusions that that's going to be a reality. The high-speed train, rather.
Well, I will say I hope that the high-speed train does become a reality. We've got one starting here in Florida, and I would love to see many, many more of them in the U.S. Now, as for Brian's prediction, I think he's right for a lot of reasons. Among them, that we have much of the infrastructure already there. If you look at many exits from interstates and from turnpikes and such, if you look carefully, you will find these freight marshaling yards where the tandem trucks will pull off, park one of the trailers, and then drive a single trailer into a city or into a place where the duals are not allowed. Those same places would be logical spots to end the road for an autonomous freight vehicle. The other thing is that the interstate environment is dramatically simpler for machine intelligence than is any sort of urban center. I've talked to the engineers at automobile manufacturers about this, and they say that if they only had to deal with cars on the interstates, we'd already have self-driving cars. So I think that Brian's right, because we have here on the mainland a dramatic shortage of long-haul truck drivers. The economics are forcing this to happen. The technology is maturing at the same time. And between the two camps, the vendors and the truckers, they'll put enough pressure on the legislators to make sure that it happens.
Fantastic. Well, folks, that does it for the predictions of 2019. I think we did pretty well. I think I'm going to bet a pretty good amount on, virtual amount on the fact that we did pretty well there. I think we should almost maybe, I know we had some people actually virtually bet on movies and how much they're going to make. We should start doing that on whether our predictions are right. I think we'll see who wins there. But I think we did a great job. Well, folks, unfortunately, you've done it again. You've sat through another hour of the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe, according to 9 out of 10 crystal balls. But I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially my co-hosts. I couldn't do this show without them. It's been a pleasure doing this show with you guys this year. And I think we had a fabulous 2018, and I foresee an even better 2019 for TWiET, and that's because of my partners in crime, starting with Heather Williams. Can you tell the folks at home where they can find you and all of your work?
Well, you can find me mostly at Mo Better Wi-Fi for the Snark. My work you can see in various places if it's Wi-Fi related at Ruckus. I am actually going to be spending, I have a prediction for you. I will be spending a good deal of the first quarter in Vegas, unfortunately, and ending up in Singapore, fortunately.
Wow, you're doing some traveling there. Fantastic. Well, of course, I can't tell you that I love doing this show with all of you, and especially Mr. Curtis Franklin, Senior Editor at Dark Reading. Curtis, can you tell the folks at home where they can find you and all of your work?
Well, they can always find my writing at Dark Reading. I have a new piece up this afternoon on what Intel says about the fabulous way that it has handled all of the Meltdown Inspector stuff, and some comments on that response. I've got a couple of other great pieces coming up next week. I've already done the interviews. I'm really excited about them. So check me out at Dark Reading. If you want to find out when those pieces post, make sure to follow me on Twitter at KG4GWA.
Thanks, Curtis. Of course, we have to thank our geek in paradise and our tireless producer, Mr. Brian Chee. Cheeber, can you tell the folks at home where they can find you, where they can give you show ideas, where they can do all that stuff?
I am ADVNETLAB on Twitter, Advanced Net Lab, and I'm also Cheebird at twit.tv. But better yet, why don't you use TWiET at twit.tv and hit all the hosts? I have been getting your emails, and I am starting to work on those. And Mo was just real subtle about wanting me to schedule a show on her pet topic. So, yeah, I'll work on that, Mo. No problem.
Fantastic. Well, happy New Year to you all, but we also have to thank you. You're the person that drops each and every week. You drop in and you listen and watch our show and to get your enterprise goodness, and we want to make it easy for you to watch and listen to the show. So go out right now to twit.tv/TWiET. There you'll find all of our amazing back episodes, all the show notes. You'll have information about the guests, the co-hosts, and links to all those great stories that we do during the show. But more importantly, next to the videos, you'll get that helpful download and subscribe link, and to actually help and support our show, download the audio version, the video version, or HDO video version of your choice, and listen on any one of your devices, or go to where you get your podcast that you do today. It's the best way to listen and get your enterprise and IT news. Now, after you subscribe, share it with your friends and family. And of course, we also do this show live each and every week at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time at live.twit.tv. Come see how the show is run. And if you're going to jump in live, you might as well jump into the chat room live as well. IRC.twit.tv. We always get great comments and questions, and we tend to veer the show in the direction of the conversation in there. So jump in there and join the chat room and make part of history here. Also, don't forget that you can follow me at twitter.com/LouMM. You get to see what I do during my normal daily work week at Microsoft. You can check out dev.office.com, where I post all of the greatest and greatest stuff that we do on extending Office and making it more productive for you. I also want to thank everyone who makes the show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa, who continue to support us each and every week to do TWiET. I also want to thank all the engineers at TWiT who do a great job on this show and all the other shows. And I also want to thank Mr. Brian Chee, who was our tireless producer. He is the one that does all the bookings and plannings of the show, and we couldn't do the show without him. And before we sign out, I actually have to thank our TD for today. Happy New Year, Alex. Now, this is an easy one, right? Because the tradition, we're going to keep it up through 2019. What was the top prediction of the 2019 Enterprise show?
That we were predicted to continue doing this stupid tradition for the next year and beyond. I thought we could get a new one by now, but that's okay.
Maybe. But the actual right answer was Skynet is real.
Oh,
but
of course.
Okay, next time we'll get you next time for sure. Maybe we'll change the tradition as well. And until next time, I'm Lou MARESCA saying Happy New Year, and just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the Enterprise, just keep TWiET.